I would wake up every morning around 5 a.m. to pray, and little AJ would wake up just after that. I would go get her up and make breakfast with her and watch Dora the Explorer. I loved my mornings with her, playing and praying while enjoying her a ton. AJ's main challenge then was that she would wake up in the middle of the night with what seemed like nightmares, and we would have to comfort her, rock her, get her back to sleep. She would then always go back to sleep until the next morning when she would call for me to get her. In April 2002, Dennis Tenorino came to our church to preach. He is a full-blooded Italian 5-time world champion bodybuilder and very funny. After he was done preaching, he asked our pastor if he could pray for children who were having nightmares or trouble sleeping. He told our pastor that God was asking him to do this. Our pastor, of course, said, "Sure, yes." Then children of all ages came up for prayer. I went up and asked our pastor if I could bring AJ up for prayer also. Even though she was not legally ours, we were waiting for DCFS to okay the process to begin adoption paperwork. He said yes, and we were the last ones to receive prayer. Mr. Tenorino went down the line to pray for children with general prayers to sleep well and to be blessed, etc. When he got to AJ, he hesitated and said, "I sense in the past there's been a lot of hurt. I pray right now that God is healing that hurt right now, removing the memory. This one is a Joseph. She's a girl, right? It's a girl, but I see a Joseph. I just believe this girl is going to dream. This girl is going to be a dreamer, and I believe because of the impartation and because of the prayers, she is going to dream. There is nothing impossible through God and with the understanding of God." We have all this on tape as well as testimonies, first-hand accounts from many people. Mr. Tenorino then looked at Chris and myself and proceeded to tell us things that God wanted us to know. Part of it, he said, "There has been a spirit of injustice that is coming against you. God is releasing the spirit of justice to reverse it." We immediately felt that was something to do with court. Our pastor's wife said she felt the same thing, as well as a friend of ours. We did not know what this meant, but Chris and I knew it was real. But we decided not to dwell on it, so we just put it aside. He also told us that we would have more children in our home, and at that time I thought, wow, he sure missed that one. We then had 4 children, our oldest 19 and the youngest a baby. I loved them all, but we had no inclination or desire for more children. From that night on, AJ slept soundly through the night. Shortly after this time, DCFS said that AJ's mom had not shown up for a long time and asked if we would be willing to adopt her if it went to adoptions. I said, "Are you kidding? Of course we will." Our hearts were so engaged and so in love with her. This beautiful little girl has brought so much joy to us every single day. For the next couple of weeks, I called and kept asking when we could start the adoption process, but it seemed like there were continued delays on the part of DCFS, or at least by the social worker. On the first week of May 2002, Chris received a call stating that an allegation against me abusing Matthew had been lodged. We had heard of many such cases concerning others, and if you do foster care long enough, this would eventually happen to you. So we did not think too much of it. 2 ladies from DCFS came out to investigate, and they spoke with our children individually, Lacey, Misty, and Matthew, each privately. After this time with the children, both ladies said there was nothing wrong here, not to worry, that they would get it all handled. One of the workers had been our social worker in the past and had known us and our good reputation with many foster children. After this had happened, Chris kept feeling like I actually needed to place 4 rocks at the corners of our home property, anoint it with oil, and pray around the perimeter of our property. I felt that seemed a little Old Testament and extreme, but the night before we received the traumatic DCFS phone call, she felt the urgent need to do this, and as the man of the home, I was to do it. It was obvious that there was something to what she was feeling. I had never done anything like that before, but I could see in her face the reality and seriousness of what she was feeling. It was after 11 p.m. I was tired and felt a little strange doing this, but I did it. We then both prayed and went to bed. Just after 2 a.m. in the middle of the night, our doorbell rang, which startled us and woke us up. I opened the door to a neighborhood security guard. He said our cars had been vandalized outside, right in front of our own home on the street. My car and my daughter's car had been vandalized with graphic, vulgar language and accusations, but our van and our driveway on our property had not been touched, nor had our property at all. I was thinking that this is so interesting, and who would do this? We did not have any enemies or problems with any people, and neither did my daughter. We had quiet neighbors and were friends with the ones we knew. I was grateful that I was woken up because I cleaned it all up before my daughter saw the kind of things that were written on both of the cars. The next day, which was 1 week after the first DCFS allegation call, Chris received another call from DCFS. This time it was from our DCFS worker. She told Chris to pack up everything of AJ's as they were coming to move her in 1 hour. Chris was understandably shocked and very upset and asked why. The worker said it was due to the allegations against Mike. Chris said they were not true. How could you do this? The worker was rude to Chris on the phone and said, "We don't feel it's safe here for her, and you will never see her again." Chris called me extremely upset at church. I couldn't believe it. I was so upset. I told my pastor and his wife, and I called my best friend Daryl and his wife and asked them to pray. I then rushed home praying all the way. I want to explain that I really enjoy people. I try not to judge people, and I personally got along with this particular DCFS worker. However, AJ would not go to this woman at all. This particular children's caseworker had long black and gray hair, usually wore black, and had skull rings on her fingers and a dragon pendant. There was a skull on her antenna of her car and wording across the top of the windshield that said Fury. Again, I'm not trying to judge her, but these details did seem pretty strange for being a children's social worker. While Chris was packing up AJ's belongings, she was asking God why this was happening. She felt God reminded her of what was said by Dennis Tenorino, that this was what it's all about. When I got home to my wife, Misty and Matthew were there. Darryl and Gladys West came also, as well as our pastor's wife, Melinda Sweet. We were all very upset and crying. AJ just walked around playing and sitting on my lap, happy as always. Melinda asked if we had a video camera, which I got for her, and she took videos so we'd have something to remember AJ by. A while later, a different social worker came to the house and put all of AJ's stuff in the car. When she asked for AJ, I could not give her up. Chris had to do it. I just could not let her go. I held my kids after AJ left and assured them that no one would take them from us. We all cried and we thanked our friends for coming and asked them to please keep praying and tell others to do the same. I had to go into the bedroom where I cried so hard because the emotional pain hurt so much. I had never known what it was like to actually experience the loss of a child. I did not know what would happen to our little baby girl that they took away crying. I literally could not stop crying for a long time. From that time on, my ears began ringing, and I've never stopped since. When I cried out to God at this time, He gave me a scripture in my head, which I knew, the book and verse number, but I did not know what the scripture said. I looked it up, and it says, "Call to me, I will answer you and show you great and mighty things which you do not know." It is Jeremiah 33:3. I needed that kind of reassurance from God right then. At that time, there were over 50,000 foster children in LA County, which is an enormous county anyway. We had no idea where AJ was going or if we would ever see her again. Chris reminded me that this is what we were foretold about the spirit of injustice that was released out against us. But God released a spirit of justice to reverse the decision. I also remembered what Clyde had said, that no matter what, God would take care of her. I really needed these two prophetic words from God-loving people because it physically felt as though our baby girl had just died. But to me, even worse maybe, if that's even possible, was not knowing what she was going to go through, or how people would treat her, or if she thought we had just abandoned her. About a week of not hearing anything and crying out to God, the young lady that worked at the physical therapist with Chris and AJ called us and said she had just visited a home where she heard a younger child crying and saw that it was AJ. She called to ask what happened, as she was shocked to see AJ there and not with us. She knew how much we loved this little girl and saw how great Chris worked continuously with AJ on her physical needs and speech. She told us that AJ was just a couple of blocks away. She was concerned as AJ was very upset. I immediately called our foster agency to ask what they knew. Was she okay, and is there any way we could speak to the foster parents? They told me what they could, but it would be up to the foster parents to call us. I went outside to pray and cry out to God to please let me know that she was okay. A short time later, the foster mom called me. She was very nice, but very guarded, as they obviously said who knows what to these people. After talking for a while, however, she agreed to let us come over to visit with AJ. We immediately set it up for the next day, and they really just lived 2 blocks away. When we came into their home and saw AJ, she just stared at us and looked terribly traumatized. Both of our hearts broke and we cried. We brought her favorite snack, chocolate raisins. She absolutely loved those at home, but this day she just looked at them. After about 30 minutes of talking with her and playing with her, she began to smile again. It was so great seeing her, but so sad to see the effect the trauma of moving had on her. As we went to leave, he pointed out to a small metal sculpture of a boy on a bike, and with a question said, "Matt?" AJ could say her brother's name pretty well. As Chris and I got into our van and backed out of the driveway, we honked the horn, and AJ waved back from the window. We were able to visit AJ 2 more times at this foster home. Each time was better, as she loved seeing us, and we think felt much more secure. Each time we would honk our horn and wave as we left. We were given permission by our foster care agency and foster parents to visit. When the DCFS office heard of the visits, the one supervisor called me yelling and screaming and said that was not permitted. I calmly said we were given permission and were never told otherwise. That just got this person more upset. We truly had no idea it was not permitted. Throughout this process, the lead management of DCFS in Lancaster, California continually told me they would look into things. would call me back and more, none of which they ever did. My friend and attorney Mike Medicis told me warned me not to speak with any of them. He said they would just delay it and work on a case against us. I believed Mike. I just could not believe this could happen in America. It did not make sense to me that this could possibly happen. It was like a nightmare horror movie. Well, for about 3 months, I did everything humanly possible to try and get AJ back. I spoke to all the foster organizations I could. I spoke to the police department, spoke to foster parents. I spoke with the mayor and his wife of the city. I called and emailed the woman in charge of the entire LA County DCFS. I tried everybody and everything I could with phone calls, emails, and in person. Then, while in desperate prayer, I felt God tell me to call Cheryl at CareNet Pregnancy Agency Resource Center. Chris had worked there part-time as a volunteer to help. Cheryl was very busy being the director of CareNet. I thought to myself, how was she going to have time to sit down and listen to this story? To my story and to our grief. Well, as God would have it, she picked up the phone when I called, was available, and said for us to come on over. So Chris and I got in the car and went right over. Cheryl graciously listened while I spoke with agony in my voice and tears in my eyes. She then told us with lots of love, caring, and from past experience of her own, that I needed to totally detach myself from AJ and the whole situation and let God handle it. I'm sure I looked at her with disbelief and wonder, thinking, how in the heck do you do that?